Hi. Leadership. We typically think of it as a role that is bestowed upon someone, perhaps ourselves, as a result of a promotion or, if we're politically inclined, through elections. But the fact is that leadership is both highly individual and something we all engage in even if we don't have that official role. Every action we take, every word we speak is an act of leadership. I talk in much more detail about that in the video, which I will link to down below, called Why You Are, yes, You Are a Leader. And so with that as a starting point, let's look at what I call the 6 pillars of leadership. These are in part skills that we can learn and in part values that we need to hold if we're going to be the kind of leader that that I hope you want to be. So, there are 3 internal pillars and 3 external pillars. And by internal, I mean aspects of ourselves, of who we are and how well we know ourselves. And by external, I mean ways that we operate in the world, how we show up and what we do. First, though, a quick introduction. Who am I and what gives me the expertise to talk to you about leadership? I'm Grace Judson. I call myself a leadership geek. I've been teaching and coaching and consulting on leadership for many years now. And prior to that, I was 16 years of actual executive leadership in corporate America on top of other years of various types of roles. I've had corporate experience both as an employee and as an executive leader within organizations, plus my years working with clients has given me a long, wide, and deep view on how leaders struggle and how they succeed. So, that said, let's look at those six pillars, those success factors, starting with the internal pillars. The first internal pillar is values. Values are what we take a stand for. They show up whether we've consciously taken the time to really understand our values or not, in how we behave, what we do, where we put our focus. One of the things I do with every client, whether it's within an organization and I'm working with a team or a group or individual clients, is to take them through an exercise to hone in on and deeply identify their values and then understand how they can hold themselves accountable to living those values in everyday life. Okay, so maybe you're asking, why is this a pillar of leadership? Because, as I said, how we show up in the world is ultimately based on what we value. Whether we know those values or not, or whether we are consciously aware of them or not. Therefore, understanding what we value and then holding ourselves accountable to those values is a part of being a trustworthy, strong, and effective leader. And I would say it's part of being a good person living a meaningful life. Because honestly, when you know your values and you can look at them and hold yourself accountable to them, there really is something very rewarding in that. Okay. Second pillar is empathy, and I will start immediately by saying that empathy is not about taking responsibility for anyone else's feelings, and it is not about allowing yourself to be overwhelmed by anyone else's emotional reactions or responses. And in fact, within the workplace setting, I will call it professional empathy. It is purely and simply understanding. Not just understanding the words that someone's saying, that's obviously relatively easy, but understanding where they're coming from, why they might be feeling the way they do, why they might be reacting the way they are. And one important thing here is that having empathy for someone does not in any way mean you suddenly have to agree with them or even approve of their behavior. It just means you understand. And when you understand at that level of professional empathy, you have a greater ability to influence them and to be a leader for them. Okay. Third internal pillar is courage. Courage is essential for a leader. I often say that leadership is a big fuzzy gray ball of uncertainty, and it takes courage to navigate through this and to make the necessary decisions and choices and take the necessary actions and responsibility. It's important to recognize that courage is emphatically not the absence of fear or uncertainty. It is the ability and determination to keep going even in the presence of fear or uncertainty. Okay, each of these internal pillars requires some self-awareness and reflection. I mean, obviously they're internal, right? But if we truly want to embody them and make them part of our leadership process and our personal leadership model, then we have to take that time for self-reflection, self-awareness. So, onward to the external pillars. And the first one is communication, which includes the ability to truly listen, which is a necessary component or skill, if you will, for professional empathy, right? I heard a comment on a podcast a while ago to the effect that when you're not listening to someone, not really listening, you're essentially telling that person that they don't exist. And I will tell you, when I heard that, it stopped me in my tracks for how very true it is. If you've ever experienced not being listened to, and I think, hey, we all have, right? You know that feeling. So along with that level of true listening, communication means being as transparent as possible with what's going on, telling people the context of the tasks and projects they're working on, and making sure you give feedback, positive as well as negative, corrective, I'll say, really, as immediately as possible. I'm going to be leaving some links down below in the video notes here that will link out to some videos that I've done on many of these topics, or that are relevant to many of these topics. Okay, second internal pillar is strategic thinking. And I will grant you that strategy is a kind of slippery concept. The best definition I've come across so far, at least, is that it's about a vision for change plus a high-level plan for getting to that vision, which, of course, means you have to have a solid definition of what your vision for change is. So many failures in business come about because of a lack of that clarity, and then a lack of communication about what success actually looks like. Now, interestingly, what happens is next is that the high-level tactical plan gets rolled down from senior decision makers and becomes the strategy for the next level down. Thus, each department, for instance, takes on their own strategic vision for change relative to how the larger vision applies to their area of responsibility. And then from there, they create their tactical plan, which rolls down to the team level and so on. I will add on this topic that every single executive and executive coach I have talked to about this, and that adds up to quite a few, has said that strategic thinking is the single most needed and most lacking skill in first-line and mid-level managers. So understanding strategy and strategic thinking is really important to your career development. Okay. Third external pillar is execution. Without execution, which includes making the decisions and adapting to roadblocks and the resulting necessary changes, all the strategy and plans in the world are really just dreams and fantasies. I actually saw someone post on LinkedIn the other day that a vision without execution is actually a nightmare. You must know how to execute on those plans. You must know what the plans entail, what resources you need, how to get from the beginning to the end of the process, and how to make the appropriate decisions along the way. And that means understanding what guides those decisions, which comes back full circle to the internal pillars. Okay, these are the 6 pillars, the 3 internal and the 3 external of leadership. There are a lot of links in the video description below to some additional videos and other content about all this. And, of course, if you liked this video, do please subscribe. Click the notifications button so that you'll get notified when I release new videos. I'm not on a schedule with them, so having that notification will be really useful to you. And, even more importantly, if you have a question or comment, I answer all comments personally. Please drop any questions, comments, and thoughts into the comments below. And go forth, be the leader you truly are and want to be. Take care.